Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm Wren. Today we're going to do a full body muscle tension release class. There's no real props that you have to make this work, but some things that if you happen to have them, that's great. If not, we'll improvise. So I'll be using a foam roller, a muscle roller, and lacrosse balls. So foam roller kind of looks like this. They're different sizes. If you happen to have something like this at home, then super. If you don't, you can get creative. You can roll up a yoga mat or an exercise mat and use that. You can tightly roll a few beach towels together. If you have anything that's similar that you can roll on. But we won't do that for absolutely everything. So if you just don't have something that will work for the things that we do with the foam roller, then there are plenty of other things that we'll do that will work for you. This is another kind of a foam roller. It's a little bit harder. So things that might work if you don't have a big foam roller, you can definitely use this in place of this. But if you have like a big bottle like this, that might suffice, or you can even freeze a water bottle. A little note on frozen things though, if you're going to use like a frozen water bottle instead of a foam roller. Number one, it can be pretty hard. And two, the point of this is not to introduce something cold towards your muscles. So if you do use something like that, maybe wrap it in a towel or something like that. Another thing that we'll use is a muscle roller. And you might think, hey, I have something like that in my kitchen, or something similar, like a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin or a muscle roller, take a peek in your closets. You may have like a drumstick or something that looks like a drumstick. Even like a soap or a shampoo bottle, you can kind of use as a muscle roller. Last thing, I'm just using regular lacrosse balls. If you have them, awesome. If you have something like them, like a tennis ball or something like that, tennis balls tend to be a little bit softer, but that's totally fine. If you're like, I don't have anything like that, things that I've used in the past, a frozen lemon, a frozen orange, a frozen apple, again, something frozen, I would definitely wrap that in a sock or a towel or something like that. So take a peek in your closets, take a peek under the bed. I'm sure you have something that will suffice. Grab your things. If you don't have those things, but you really would like to come back to this class and take it, these are just regular plain lacrosse balls. Don't be fooled by the online shopping world and get something fancy like muscle tension release roller balls or anything like that. Don't waste your money. They're all the same thing. And if you can support a local sporting goods store somehow to grab those, I would exercise that avenue first before hopping on Amazon. But full disclosure, this is the Amazon Basics foam roller because I think it's awesome. But there are many great foam rollers out there that do not come from Amazon. So anyhow, let's get started, shall we? So I'm just gonna back up a ways so you can see me. Let's just begin in a seat. And if you have like a couch pillow or something like that that you can stick underneath your sitting bones, that will be super. The idea is to get your hips higher than your knees. So if you're somebody who kind of is like this because of tight hips in a cross-legged seat, then really stack it up underneath your sitting bones to give yourself some height there so that we start to relax and open up that angle of the hips. Relax your hands down and then either gaze softly downward or close your eyes. And just take a couple moments to acknowledge that you're here and not anywhere else, and that this is what you're doing. There's nothing else to do right now, and that's fine. And there's really no need to change or control your breath, but just notice the way that it's floating in and out. And if you notice that there's something you would like to change about it, then feel free. But if it already feels smooth, even, deep, then just give it your attention. And we will move through the whole body today, and we will be offered up many options. But start to get an idea in your mind right now. What are those areas of your body where you normally hold tension? And it's been my experience throughout this type of class that we'll find some that you weren't even aware of. But what are those places for you? Notice if they feel even just a little bit tense right now. It's common to hold some tension maybe in the corners of the eyes or between the eyebrows. Perhaps holding the 2 rows of teeth close together, creating tension in the jaw or in the neck. Do the shoulders or even the chest muscles or the rib cage feel tense and holding in towards the center line? The belly, the waist, the hips, the glutes, thighs and calves, arms, hands, and feet. Where are you tense? And see if even just bringing your awareness to that area now can start to encourage it to soften and let go of its grip just a little bit. Sometimes those areas hold onto that tension no matter what. So something that can be useful is to focus all of your attention there. Let's just make an example. Let's say it's the jaw. So I'm going to accentuate that tension on my inhale and then let it go with my exhale. And sometimes that takes a few rounds. So take another deep breath in wherever that area is for you. Clench it tight. And then let it go with your breath. One more time. Let it go. Bring your breathing back to normal. And then lift your eyelids if they're closed. And then if you're sitting on a cushion, go ahead and come off of it. If there's any kind of relaxing music that you'd like to play in the background, feel free. And also if you have some hand sanitizer nearby or a way to pause and wash your hands, it's not going to come just yet, but it'll come later. So we're actually just going to start off with no props, just our hands and feet. And so we're going to interlace our fingers in between our toes. So index finger in between the big toe and the second toe, and so on down. Really wiggle them in there. Make some space. You may have to choose which part of your finger, the skinnier part towards the tip or the meatier part towards the knuckles. And while we have that, you can kind of hold your leg up a little bit. We'll just do a couple little ankle circles. See if you can really let go of the thought that the ankle itself needs to move. And see if you can just move your ankle around with your hand. And then change directions. Any little snaps, crackles, or pops are likely and perfectly fine. Good, and then holding onto that grip, start to flex that foot back and forward, while also sort of curling the toes back and forward. Good, and then release that grip, and just a couple movements of the toes on their own. And then with your thumbs, You can start to sort of massage and press into the arch of the foot, leading up towards the ball of the foot. And then pinch each pad of the toe a couple times, making your way on down the outer ridge of the foot towards the heel. That place where your heel meets the midfoot, give that a little attention. Then the outer edges of the heel and the meatier part of the heel. And then we're going to give our foot almost like an Indian burn. So grip the top of the foot with one hand, the bottom of the foot with the opposite hand, placing your hands in opposing grips, and then twisting your foot in opposite directions. Be gentle. Decide how much force you need. Awesome, and then we'll switch sides. So interlacing the fingers in the next set of toes. And some passive ankle circles. And switch directions. And then curling the toes back and then the foot forward and then the toes. Moving in the joints of the toes and the ankle. Good, and then release that grip. And starting on that foot massage on this side. Ideally, before we start to get into our foam rolling and deep stretching, it's nice if your muscles can be a little bit warm already. So I like to do this after a warm bath or shower, or after a workout. So keep that in mind, and if that doesn't happen to be possible for you today, then I would say go no more than like 80% of the amount of sensation that you can tolerate for these stretches and for the props that we're going to use. And making your way on around to all the surfaces of the foot, and then taking that grip, and almost like you're wringing out a towel or a dish sponge, we're going to wring out those feet. Good, and then some active motion with the toes. Awesome. So again, no props needed for this one. If you've ever taken my yoga class before, we have done this. This is called toe crusher or broken toe pose. So tuck your toes underneath. Make sure your pinky toes also face forward. And then we're going to sit back on the heels. Now, it's important for you to understand the difference between pain and sensation, as I like to say. So if you sit back here and you feel like a tearing or a sharp pain that is like unbearable, that's more than a stretch, then back off. It's too much. You can do this from here, or you can put some padding in between your butt and your heels and come down a little more gently. You can also lean a little forward and then just press your sitting bones back towards your heels. So decide what level of intensity makes sense for you today. Also knowing this is pretty intense already. So just be mindful. Better to be safe than sorry. But it's important to take care of the feet. They do an important job for us. And sometimes when we sit here for we don't know how long, we get to that point where we're like, okay, I've had enough of this broken toe pose. And that's kind of a lesson in where we hold tension in the body. Are you starting to feel tense in the shoulders, or in the belly, or in the jaw, or in the face because of this uncomfortable thing that we're doing? Does that parallel or mimic the way you hold tension when you are encountering something uncomfortable in your life? Can we learn to breathe through that? Sit with it. Know that it's not permanent. Acknowledge the impermanence of the pain and start to let go of some of the attachment to it. What would happen if I pressed my feet down a little further and sat up a little higher and took my breath down and deep to the bottom of the pelvic floor and back out again? And what if I only had to do that 4 more times? Could I do it and not be in a rush to get to the end? Could I know that in a moment this too will be a memory? Could I somehow become grateful for the opportunity to do it? And then could I come out of it with grace and ease and tap the tops of my feet down on the mat? I know it feels like it's gonna hurt, but do it. Feels good. Go ahead and sit back now with the toes pointing behind you. Just a quick little counter pose. We're capable of going through some really amazing things. A lot of times we don't give ourselves credit. So, anyhow, let's move on. Grab whatever you're going to use as a lacrosse ball, and we'll actually go ahead and stand up. So, you decide how much of your body weight you want to put down on this bad boy, and we'll start with the heel staying planted down on the mat. And we'll just kind of start to lean forward. So this ball is hitting me right in the center of the ball of my foot. So if I were to come up close and show you what that would look like, it's hitting me right about here. So part of this is not only letting go of tension, which is necessary for mobility, but we're also working through some joint articulation and mobility. So I'm just leaning my weight forward and back, curling my toes around that ball, and then splaying them up and back and away. We can do that just a couple times. You can always pause and spend more time doing something that feels particularly yummy for you. And then I'll go ahead and leave that weight forward, but I'm going to leave my toes neutral, so not gripping, and just rock that ball side to side on the ball of my foot. And you may feel like a little hot spot. So for me, it's kind of at my big toe ball mound. It may be somewhere different for you, and you may not have one, and your left and right feet will be different from one another. If you find that hot spot and you want to kind of hang out there for a tick or two, use that breath exercise that we did in broken toe pose and get to a point where that sensation is not so extreme. And then we can continue to move on, so letting that ball come up more now towards the midfoot and rolling it back and forth. If this feels like your balance is maybe not working well for you today and being on the ball like this doesn't feel stable, then please feel free to brace with a chair or the back of the couch or a windowsill. And you don't have to stay right in the center of the foot. You can kind of go towards the medial edge and the lateral edge. Just rolling in between the ball of the foot and the ridge of the heel. And again, if you're a runner, you're going to probably find a few places that feel super gnarly, where you just kind of want to jam your weight down on there. And by want to, I mean don't want to. And then you can move on to the heel. And when you're ready, we'll switch our sides. So maybe 5 or 10 times of that back and forth while gripping, flexing the toes. And then finding that roll. You may be surprised to feel the difference left to right. Or maybe it makes total sense to you. usually find at least 1 or 2 surprises when I do these rollout workouts. And there's certainly room to improvise here. You don't have to do exactly as I say. So if you find something that feels kind of intuitive to you, feel free to make this your own. Awesome. So we'll set that guy to the side for now. And we'll take the rest of this down towards the floor. There won't be a lot of up and down. So for these next few, it's kind of up to you what you have and or what you want to use. I'll be demonstrating with my regular foam roller now here to start. We're going to move on to the calves. If you don't have anything that works as a foam roller, but you are working with maybe the rolling pin or the lacrosse balls, I'll be showing those next, so feel free to skip ahead. So calves, we're going to start off one at a time. So we're going to start pretty low, just above the ankle. And then we're going to lift the hips on up. You can decide how much support you need underneath and how much weight you want to put on top. So you certainly can stack your legs and press down more in the legs as opposed to weight more in the hands. And we're going to roll back and forth. You may certainly brace with your other leg if this is too intense to have both on top. And I encourage you to sort of explore the lateral and medial edges of your calf muscles and your soleus muscle down here underneath that big meaty part of the calf. So you can kind of do a little lateral with the toes pointing out, and a little medial with the toes angled in. You may feel someplace that feels like it constantly kind of rolls over, like your muscle is rolling over. Maybe spend a little more, give a little more attention to that area. This can start to get pretty gnarly. I'm already sweating from doing this because my calves are so tight. And that may be a different area of the body for you, or you may be right here with me in the pain cave. But again, we come back to the breath. So notice if the breath has become short or choppy. Acknowledge if you need to take a break. And then come back when you're ready. I'll go ahead and switch sides here. But again, take your time. You can definitely, and I encourage you to do these for longer than will be within the confines of this video format. And this isn't necessarily a one and done, right? It's important to do this, I would say, at least once a week. And it becomes a lot less like torture the more often you do it. Awesome. Let's take a break with the backs of the calves. I've always found it pretty difficult to isolate the fronts of my shins, but it can be done. So we'll go ahead and face this guy. And you can get creative about what works for you with the position of your body. So you can bring one shin on top. I would roll off of the shin bone towards the lateral, the outside edge, where your meaty part of your shin is. And again, you have a lot of control for how much weight you push down. And then switching sides. Again, take your time. No need to rush. Good. So, if you don't have one of these guys, but you'd like to do something for these muscle groups, if you're working with a muscle roller or a rolling pin, you can start underneath and roll, and then make your way around to the front. And they don't always have to be long back and forth strokes. You can kind of do like these. Always avoid bones and joints, always, no matter what. So we can do a little bit of that left to right. And just to show you as an example. Now, my favorite and least favorite thing in the world to do for calves. We're going to take this lacrosse ball, put it right in the meaty part of the calf, and then close that angle off between the back of the thigh. Really squeeze down on that sucker, and then kind of play with where it is. You can sort of push it back and forth with your thumbs, or take it out and find a new place. And at some point you're going to find a part that's like, haha. And then I would just kind of hold it there and breathe. You know your body best, so if you have any kind of past injury or physical limitations, something that just doesn't feel right to you, then please don't listen to everything I say. Just use what I'm showing you as a general guide for what makes sense for your body. I was teaching some of these techniques in a workshop once, yoga and Pilates for triathletes. And we were doing this, and a girl said, "Man, I didn't even know my calves were tight." And it's true, a lot of times we don't know how tight our calves are. I know until I got into the triathlon world and started doing more active recovery stuff like this, I didn't know, and they were for sure like that before. And kind of a good gauge to tell is for calves, if we have tension in the calves, we also tend to have tension in the inner groin. So if you do like a V-sit and you notice perhaps a little less flexibility there, that may correlate with tightness in the calves. So just something to think about, which is why we cover the whole body here in this class, not just certain areas. Now we can also do the shins with this ball if this is what you're working with today. And it's pretty similar to the foam roller. You just kind of get it on the lateral edge of the shin and just give it a roll. You can even do like little circles or roll from side to side, but just as an example. So now that we have the feet and the calves pretty well rolled out, let's just do a little stretch. So send one set of toes back and just press on back. You can rock forward and back if you want, or just press back. Switch sides when you're ready. Good. So for the backs of the thighs, I personally have always found it a little difficult to access with any of these gadgets. This guy is actually pretty good. You have some different surfaces and it's really quite hard. This actually, a roller works quite well too. I'll show you some options with the lacrosse balls as well, but it's really the same idea. So just kind of rolling the musculature of the back of the thigh. And all of the hamstring muscles insert and have origins and insertions in different areas. They're almost like guitar strings on the back of your legs. So again, rolling to the inner and outer edges of the legs will help. You don't have to go all the way out to the outer edge of the leg. We'll get there in a moment. Same thing with the inner edge of the thigh. We'll get there. Right now, just focus your energy on the back of your thigh. And switch legs when you're ready. And notice if the muscle that you're stretching, or I'm sorry, if the muscle that you're rolling, if it feels like it's tensing up. You'll likely feel more if you really relax that muscle as opposed to holding tension in it. So if you're not working with a foam roller and you're working with these balls, for me the trouble is, and you may experience this as well, if I put it down on the floor and I put my thigh on top of it, it kind of just disappears into my thigh and I don't really feel it. So what I have found useful in the past, if you have something, it doesn't have to be an actual yoga block, but something like a yoga block that you can put your weight on, I have found that that tends to help. So that's just an example of how you can use that. And I actually find this more effective personally than the foam roller. I can feel this a lot more. I hold a lot of tension right above the back of the knee in the back of the thigh. So I usually just kind of hang out right there and just put all my weight on that. So those are some options. Same thing with the muscle roller. It just looks like this. So if you've been working on one side so far with the ball, go ahead and switch. And then when you're ready to move on to the fronts of the thighs, we'll go there next. Starting back again with the foam roller. This one people are usually pretty familiar with. Now, again, like we weren't coming to the lateral edge of the thigh on the hamstrings, same rule is going to apply for the quadriceps. Stay on the front of the thigh or the lateral and medial edges of the front of the thigh. Don't roll all the way towards the IT band just yet. We're going to get there. So, this is an option to roll out having one leg in front. You can have it behind if that doesn't quite work for you. Just sort of experiment what works for your body. Try to go the whole length all the way from the hip towards the knee, not putting any pressure on the actual knee, of course. You may find a place that calls your attention where you want to hang out and maybe just do a tiny little back and forth, a little pulse, and then start to roll up and down it again. And it's sort of this dichotomy. We have these areas that we're like, ooh, right there is a bad one. And I want to kind of hang out there. And I want to hang out there until it's not tense anymore. Well, it doesn't really work that way. So stay there for maybe, a few rounds of breath and then start to roll long up and down it again. And then revisit it. And then, kind of let go of the need to perfect your muscles all in one day. And then we'll switch sides. And just as an example, you can also do this with your rolling pin, just like so. Okay. So now, getting toward the inner thigh. There's a couple ways to go about it. It just depends on the range of motion you have in the hip and what feels good for you. So you can kind of just come to the side like this. If that doesn't feel like a whole lot for you, you can take it one part at a time. So just the inner part above the knee. Or you can come to the edge of it, and sort of similarly to how we were before, rolling the upper inner part of the thigh. And if you know a different way that you know works for you, then by all means, the inner part of the thigh, typically not a place that we give much attention to when it comes to these kinds of things. One, because we're typically foam rolling at the gym, and straddling the foam roller at the gym, probably not what we're going to do. So that's one of the benefits to doing some of these more restorative, active relaxation workouts in the privacy of our own home. And if you want to straddle that thing at the gym, then, you know, good for you. I certainly have on more than one occasion, I will admit. Awesome. Before we move on, let's take a little stretch. So just send the feet wide. Pull the flesh out from underneath the sitting bones. Notice your toes. Just kind of pull the toenails back towards the shins. And as you start to lean forward, if your feet kind of go with you, then from way up here in the thighs, externally rotate so that you keep your toes facing up. Always have a little lean forward. You can bring your hands to your ankles or out in front of you or at the hips. You can even help gravity, bringing your fingertips gently behind the ears. But if that creates tension in the shoulders, then let it go. Then sit back, bring the soles of the feet together, knees out wide. There's a couple ways to do this. So to stretch the inner groins, have the heels closer towards you. They don't have to be way, way in if that doesn't work for your body, but do it in such a way that you feel a stretch in the inner groin. Again, probably not more than 80% of your regular flexibility in this stretch. And then to take this shape a little differently so that we stretch more in the outer hips, walk your feet away from you so you have a bigger diamond shape, and then just sort of start to lean on forward. You can kind of rock side to side. I know for me, it sort of feels like I need to do that to settle into this shape. Let the breath be long and smooth. And then come on up. So there's a reason why I've been postponing the lateral aspect of the leg. And it's this very hot button topic called our IT band. So a lot of people say things like, oh, my IT band is so tight, or I need to loosen up my IT band. And that's not really a thing. The IT band is a dense fibrous tissue. It's meant to hold tension. However, when we say that we feel like our IT bands are tight, it's really the lateral aspect of your quadricep or your hamstring or both that kind of wraps into the IT band. So when we foam roll right on the IT band, there's a lot of discussion out there that right now that we may actually be doing more damage than good, because we're creating tiny little tears in this tissue that's not very vascular and is not meant to be treated that way. Muscles, they're very vascular, meaning they have a lot of blood supply. So when we roll out our IT band, roll a little bit away from where you think your IT band really is. So I like to step my front leg on the in front of the foam roller, and then have my other leg just behind and kind of roll back and forth like this. If that doesn't work for your body and it feels better to have your foot behind it or in front of it, that is great. So for some people, it's not really the lateral aspect of the quadricep where it feeds into the IT band that's tight. For some people, it's the hamstring. And you can kind of tell where it is for you, even just by pressing into it. You may even notice, like when you wear shorts, if you see that like deep groove down the side of your leg, that's just really, really tight lateral muscles feeding in to the IT band. So take as much time as you want here with this one. We'll go ahead and switch sides, but you can definitely pause. And you can still have a lot of control how much weight you put down. If you're putting the top of the foot down to the mat like me right here, my back foot, it's probably going to be more pressure. If I have my toes tucked under, I can kind of lift my thigh up off of here a little bit. The only thing I will say there is that we're probably using these muscles a little bit to do that, or tensing up. So again, the more relaxed, or the more that you relax your muscle into this guy, the more sensation and the more benefit you're gonna get. Good, take your time here, as much time as you need. For time's sake in this video, we're gonna move on. But I am gonna stay here and come into any kind of quad stretch that works for you. So if you have a bit of range of motion and you can kind of reach back either with the same side or the opposite side arm, that's great. If that doesn't quite work and you want to come on up, you can rest your elbow down and reach back. Maybe the pant leg is accessible, or the foot or the ankle. If you can't reach onto anything, then using a strap or a belt or a towel or a sock or a scarf, that can help you out. If you prefer to take that stretch standing, you certainly may. Awesome, so working our way on up to the glutes, everyone's favorite thing. I like to do this just with the lacrosse ball. If you like to foam roll your glutes or any of the other gadgets, feel free. This for me is always pretty intense, and I usually spend way more time than we're going to spend in this video doing this. So I lift myself up onto my hands and my feet, and then just kind of start to roll around in between the bony structures. So at the bottom, I can feel my sitting bone, and I sort of roll to the inner edge of the coccyx and sacrum, and then way up towards the iliac crest and around. We're getting here more in the piriformis, and then back down, and then kind of through the middle. You'll find those areas that feel like electricity going through your body or something like that, and then you can kind of just hang out there. This is where we're really, really, really gonna try to relax our glute muscles. Your gluteus medius is probably really gonna tense up, and it's a hard muscle to access if you're not used to it. So just breathe Sometimes tensing up the opposite glute and then relaxing it can encourage the side that we're on. And then roll it around a little bit and then start to go in those big circles again. So take your time doing this. I also encourage you to kind of roll to the outer edge of the hip. Again, never on the hip bone, but down here towards the piriformis. We'll take it on the other side. And I would honestly encourage you to spend like a good 5 minutes or more per glute. If you can do it for longer each, that's super. But for time's sake, we'll go ahead and move on. We're just gonna stick in a similar area. We're gonna use that piriformis kind of as our track and then come around to the front. So as you roll over onto your front, this should not be digging into your hip bone, but it should be below it. And then we're gonna come on to the front of the hip. Now it depends. Right now I have the ball on the same side as my straight leg. And you can kind of move around in there. Another way to do this is to have it on the inner part of your bent leg. You'll find that little part of the hip that almost feels like a little nook. You can stick the ball there and then just very, very gently roll the hips back and forth or side to side, or as if you were coming into this half frog pose by bringing both hips equally down. So then, to show you the other side, we would start towards that piriformis, roll it onto the outside, and coming onto the inside. And then you can always move it to this bent leg. So moving on from the lower body, we're obviously not going to be rolling our stomach, so we'll stick with the back body for now. If you have low back issues, typically they stem from elsewhere, but this can kind of feel pretty good. Just a gentle roll, again, not right on the spine with much pressure. You might feel one side or the other. Another way to do this is to really lean more to one side. And just roll sort of just between the low ribs and the hips. So not a huge range of motion here. We can also use this to accentuate the curvature of the spine. So you can keep your hands down if this feels like a lot of opening in the chest, to have them open. You can put something underneath your head if that angle is too much. You can keep the knees bent or you can straighten them. Just opening up in the front body here. So even though we're not rolling the front part of the belly, we can start to stretch in a gentle way. Breathe deeply into the belly. If you're not quite sure how to come out of this, I have found that it's helpful to bend the knees and then just gently roll like you're coming into a bridge pose, and then slide that guy out of the way. Take your time and lower your spine on down so that you're lying on your back. Then you can roll to one side and come on up. You can definitely use the lacrosse balls on the low back as well. Make sure you're placing them on either side of the spine, not on the spine, and above your hip bones. And you can lie on back on your forearms and then lift your sitting bones up and just roll up and down. So moving on up, pretty similar, but just a little higher. So you can start by rolling like so across the shoulder blades. You can create a little basket to hold your head. If you'd like to pause, opening up in the chest. You can spend a few moments there. Moving to the rib cage and the muscles wrapping around your serratus muscles here, wrapping from underneath the armpits towards the rib cage. I think no matter who you are, this makes you want to cry. I don't know, maybe not. This is so gnarly for me. So just as a reference, I'm really doing more here underneath from the shoulder to the mid ribs towards the shoulder blade. But you can kind of play around and find what feels good for you. You can even come gently forward towards the side of the chest, kind of getting into those intercostal muscles, the muscles in between the ribs or near to them. And we'll switch sides for that as well. And for time's sake, we'll move a little quickly through these just so you have an idea of what all to do with these gadgets. Awesome. So, back to the lacrosse balls. We're going to stick with these guys as we get into the shoulder girdle. So, right above the mid-back, kind of that meaty part of the shoulder where if somebody comes and gives you a shoulder rub with their thumbs, that's where these are going to hit us. So opposite sides of the spine, but in between the shoulder blades. Lie on back, and then shimmy around until you find a place that feels like you can hang. You can definitely wiggle and roll around. See if you can take a few breaths to let your whole back relax down. And then either one arm at a time or both together, you can start to move through some range of motion in the shoulders. So raise your hand up overhead and then cactus it out to the side. You can do a few like that. You can reach across your body and then back. And again, you can do this one at a time or both together. So just a little intuitive movement, maybe like a little modified softball pitch, forward and back, underhand, overhand. You can come back to just sort of rolling or even shrugging your shoulders up and down. And then we'll take these up to the left and right sides of the neck. Again, just that really little range of motion, gentle roll. And then the fronts of the shoulders. So these are going to come kind of right there. You'll find sort of where your pec feeds into the middle of the shoulder joint. We really want to get that tip of the pectoral muscle there. So coming on down, you may find, just depending on what you have making up your chest, male or female, this might be good. If you have like more tissue there, you may not even feel this yet. So then I would kind of encourage maybe a little roll to the side. Find that place where it sort of catches your breath, and then you know you've found the proper area. And then try to ease that breath. Awesome. So spend as much time there as you would like. We'll come on up. Props aside, we're done with those. Because we should anyway, and because we've touched our feet, go ahead and pause and wash your hands, or if you have hand sanitizer nearby, go ahead and use that. Let's clean our hands because I'm going to ask you to touch your face. If you're an essential worker or living like with an essential worker, please take the time to use soap and water here. So, with clean hands, just let them kind of rest to the side. Just take a little neck range of motion. Let your jaw be soft and unhinged. Take as much time as you need to do these stretches in the neck. Be gentle, never forceful. If you like, you can very gently, just the weight of the hand while the other arm reaches away. And then switch sides. Again, please take your time. You don't have to go as fast as we're going here in this video. You can either stand up or just come to your knees for this. Interlace your fingers behind you and then send your knuckles straight down. Pinch your shoulder blades towards one another, and then with your hands just as they are, slide them over to one hip. Send your elbows back behind as if they were going to touch each other behind you. Whichever side your hands are on, tip that ear to that shoulder. Notice if the shoulder creeps up toward the ear, let it be down and back. You can even do this, if you're a sucker like me, in toe crusher. But we really want to focus on the neck, so if that causes tension, then avoid that. Spend as much time as you need here. We'll go ahead and switch sides. Good. Opening up in the chest, and then we'll move on to some facial muscle release. If you have yoga blocks and you prefer to do this towards the floor, I'm going to show you a way to do it at the wall as well. You can definitely use blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can use like coffee cans, laundry detergent, whatever you have that looks like a box, shoe box, whatever. So press the palms together, and rather than thinking of bringing your face or your forehead down towards the mat, think of bringing your chest or the front of your neck down towards the mat. So opening up underneath your armpits. Now, you can definitely do this at a wall. And even though I'll be turned away from you, you can definitely get the idea. So putting the elbows up, and then leaning your chest towards the wall. You can do this with the hands touching the wall or touching together. But that's what that would look like. So last little thing here, we hold a lot of tension in our face. And I don't know if we necessarily always know it. So with clean hands, start gently by just pressing up the bridge of the nose, and then peel the fingers apart. You can do this with 2 fingers or with 4. Just separating the flesh between the eyebrows. You can start to allow that to come over toward the temples. Maybe even give them a little rub. And then underneath the eyes, back up the ridge of the nose. And then take your thumbs through that same course and under the eyebrows. Always gentle. Always with clean hands. And then we can take it down the bridge of the nose, under the cheekbones, and over back towards the temples. Down, under, and back up. You can gently press up on the cheekbones. Gently press towards some of the sinuses. You can take your thumbs to your sinuses up here. And then moving under the cheekbones again, tracing all the way to the tragus, the front of the ear. And just a little gentle massage of the tragus. You may feel your ears close and open. And then down the jawline, back and forth. You can do a little circular motion at the jawline if you like. You can even use your fingers, just feeling the ridges of where the teeth meet in towards the jaw, chin, and back. Behind the ear, up and down. And then gently holding onto the ears, giving them just the gentlest little tug back. And then rest your hands in your lap. We'll finish with a big breath together in and out. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're feeling well. I'll see you next time.